Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Joe Quesada Day, so we're taking a look at NINJAK issue number 2, cover dated March 1994. Unfortunately, when NINJAK came out back in the day, there was a lot of hype and a lot of publicity about Joe Quesada being the artist, and unfortunately he only stayed on for 2 issues. So we looked at issue 1 last review, we're taking a look at issue 2 today, and that's it for NINJAK and Joe Quesada. And again, unfortunate because a character that I think, first of all, that he designed, so that he drew very well because he was the originator, of the design, and that other artists just couldn't quite draw NINJAK to look quite as cool as Joe Quesada did. And unfortunate just because his artwork is great, and I feel like he really shines on this series. Starting off with the cover, really cool shot of NINJAK being pushed down by the basic plot point of the story from issue 1 and issue 2, which is the black water created by the villain in this 1-2 issue storyline. It basically wraps up at the end of this issue. Dr. Silk, the villain, created this water that apparently, is more voluminous or heavy per square inch than regular water. You can cause all sorts of damage that water causes, but multiplied times, a whole bunch. And he's going to be selling that off to the highest bidder in his underground, government / criminal network. And of course, we left NINJAK last issue underwater in a car. Now we're going to see how he gets out of it in this issue. So pretty eye-catching cover. I like the idea of, the black water flowing down, being very heavy, of course, clearly on NINJAK's back, and flowing out of a skull to obviously symbolize the aspect of death that the black water represents. I think it's pretty clever, and without hitting you over the head too much with the symbolism of it. It's just a cool looking image. So right away, this panel could basically be the last panel of last issue. So we're really picking up the action right where it was left off last issue, but in a clever way, because we know by panel 2 that this character's binoculars are what we're seeing this image through, or at least on the reflection of the lens. But that extreme close-up of the binoculars, and then the panel within a panel use of the lens to show us the car driving off, the car that contains NINJAK, right? And just the attention to detail that the lens would obviously warp the perspective and make it a bit rounder, as we can see here, and it would flip the image, right? So the car's kind of backwards there. All of that is just really clever storytelling right into it. And as we move towards the bottom here, these shots, other than NINJAK in the foreground and just his eye and stuff, all pretty much in silhouettes, all really well planned out and calculated so we can see what's going on. We still see the 2 figures of the characters, bits of the car, but also these negative space areas give us kind of the wave of the water, the movement of the water, right? So basically what NINJAK is doing here, it's kind of fun. He's going to, crash the car and use the momentum of the force, because the water technically is heavier, right? The black water that's in there than regular water. He's assuming that he can just bust out through the window, and that's exactly what happens. And we get this cool double page splash that really isn't, because we've got those extra panels that I love on top of there, moving the storytelling along while still giving us the cool money shot that we want from these comics, right, in the early 90s. NINJAK, Mark Moretti's the writer, Joe Quesada penciler, Jimmy Palmiotti inker, John Cebollero colorist, and not going to worry about editors, never do. This is really, to me, like a good shot to explain how Joe Quesada kind of integrates some of that image stuff, but just makes it better. He's a more solid storyteller, I feel, and probably a more solid artist overall, or illustrator anyways, because all these extra little details for the movement that he adds in. Like, he's got the hatching, the 90s style hatching, but really his own version of it with these extra little bit of kind of textury tick lines he usually and traditionally adds on the architecture that I really like, and on the figure as well. This type of hatching on the gauntlets, right, is not something you'd see the other image guys do. He's just got his own kind of mastered way of doing the hatching that's a little bit different than the image guys, but that still works in that 90s kind of exciting vibe that I really like. And he's just masterful at using every element to convey excitement and movement, right? The water splashing all the way through, like that's, drawing water here or an explosion, there's not much of a difference. It's kind of the same discipline, in the sense, or the same thing that you're trying to evoke, right? And he even adds these kind of similar to the water effect, right? It almost looks like, you know, the headlights are crying or something, but he's going so fast that the light is even bending and stretching. And I think this is just such a masterful double page splash. And again, breaking through a window, right? So you got the pieces of window overlapping the character, behind the character. Just a masterful image that really starts off the comic well. Get a nice money shot of the next page of NINJAK recovering, and you know, his partner there has kind of bit the dust, so nothing he can do for that guy. I love this shot here of as the cops show up and the extreme light. You know, anytime you've ever driven by police officers who've got their headlights going, or if they pull you over on the highway or whatever, it's a very kind of in your face and aggressive type lighting, right? So I think he's conveying that pretty well here to a character obviously who probably prefers to stay to the shadows, right? And just the way he interprets again the headlights and the lights down here in this panel, the police cars, I think is just great. Kind of a little bit reminiscent of what he did with the car on the previous double page splash. And just, you know, runs head on, jumps over and disappears, right? Gone, can't even see him in the mirror. And if you can't read French, there's a slight typo, but whatever. Basically what he's saying is un fantôme, which means a ghost. So he's seen a ghost, and that's how we get out of that one, I guess. These shots of Dr. Silk always, I mean, still keeping him in shadows, even though we saw him last issue, keeps up the creep factor. And he's another great design, which I assume Joe Quesada did. When we see more of him later on the issue, you'll see what I mean. And at this point, we realize also that Dr. Silk has a new, what seemed to be from last issue, from the girl from last issue, but a new sex slave, basically. I've talked about the coloring last issue. I think it still works pretty well throughout. The only time it doesn't to me is when, like, these shots here to create, you know, I've talked before about how I like in some of these older comics where to convey nighttime, they just kind of put a blue, a monochrome blue across the buildings and everything to convey that it's nighttime. That works really well. Here, I feel it's like they're kind of trying to do the same thing, but it's just a little too dark. It creates a bit of lack of contrast between the black shadows and the colors in the background. So it's just a small gripe, because I mean it's still pretty legible, but there's other pages where I feel like it messes with the contrast a little bit. This was fun seeing old 90s style computer paper, right, with the two kind of taglines on the side there. And this down here feels to me very inspired by Dark Knight Returns to a certain extent, right, with the kind of crack of lightning and the sound of thunder, right, in the sound effect rather. And just the stark lighting on, I want to call it Wayne Manor, right? Because, you know, NINJAK does take a lot of inspiration from Batman. And in this issue is where I actually realized that he's British, right? Calling King's Estate, Canterbury, England. So as I was reading some of the dialogue, I started to pick up on, oh yeah, it does seem like the writers tried to give him somewhat of a British type accent or dialect, right? So it really is James Bond and a ninja mashed together here. Quick bit of storytelling page to let everyone know that a satellite has been taken over outside of the U.S. military's involvement and power to do anything about it. I love this shot here with all the saliva coming out of the general's mouth. I think that's really cool. Once again, Quesada really good at the extreme close-up. And yeah, other than that, just interesting layout as well. Some interesting panels overlapping here. Keeping, you know, even the most mundane of pages interesting. Even here, you know, it's just two guys looking, well, one guy looking at the technician looking at the computer screen, but the angle and kind of, you know, the sharp angles of the background and stuff just really make this very dynamic. The fact that he's smoking, right, back then everyone was still allowed to smoke, and he's using that as another kind of layering effect. Very cool. So I mean, this is kind of a plot point of convenience, but as the helicopter takes off with our accountant guy that we met last issue going back to Dr. Silk's island, NINJAK hitches a ride here, and I guess what they're going to say, well, the helicopter is controlled by computer, so it wouldn't necessarily pick up on that. Find that hard to believe that no one, radar or cameras would pick up the fact that a ninja's hanging off the helicopter, but what are you going to do? It's comic books. Really good angle here. Once again, the extremeness of the length of the belt on his gi here is just crazy, but creates some really cool layering, and once again, makes the shot way more dynamic, right? I like the cartooning here with our American general. I think that looks really good, and some really clever kind of spotted shadows there. Like this shot too down here where everyone's kind of, you know, nameless, faceless, and nondescript in the silhouette form. You can still recognize vastly different types of faces, right? Another general here, kind of a hardened kind of face. This guy may be more of a scientist or a technician, right? The glasses, the hair, softer features, even though it's just a profile. You know, maybe that's the president or something, right? All these guys very distinct. The only thing that kind of bothered me, again, if we're going to talk about coloring, the fact that these little bits of white or open space, we'll call negative space within the silhouette, right, to define the general here in this guy's hat and everything, I think you could have thrown in a lighter color, even just a white on that stuff to make it pop, because it's pretty much seems like it's the same, either a purple and this is a blue, but their value is pretty similar. I will say the value is pretty similar between these two. Yeah, I think that's purple and that's blue, and it doesn't, the elements don't quite pop as much as I feel like they should. So a very light blue or even a white I think would have worked better, because I like the when Quesada does that, when you see the teeth and the eyes, works really well. Then we come in closer and actually see these guys' faces, and again, some great cartooning on this page. I think he's just enjoying it and having fun with this one. Get a bit of backstory, find out that this guy is Ninjak's father, who probably also works for MI5 or whatever super secret government agency of the British government he's working for. Here, what we see is that Dr. Silk's assistant has been keeping the sex slaves drugged up, basically. It's not said what it is. It's in a needle, so I'm going to assume it's like something like heroin. You know, you can see the track marks on her arm and stuff. The telltale elastic, right, to have the veins pop out. And she's so eager to get it that she makes him drop it, and now he's very, very angry. Ninjak, hitching the ride, follows the helicopter within the kind of secret entrance in the waterfalls, and ejects from there. And this is, like I said earlier, where I feel the use of the dark blue here in the foreground doesn't work, because we almost lose Ninjak's form here. So a lighter, you know, color maybe would have been a little bit more effective. Just like the sequence here, which I think is really cool, these 4 little panels of Ninjak falling and flipping, right? Again, the purple is pretty dark. Maybe it would have helped a little bit to just pick a lighter shade for that sequence there to help contrast with the black background. Good shot of this helicopter here. Quesada draws some really cool tech for sure. Even down here, like, again, we're getting that, definitely that James Bond kind of vibe and feel to the villain's lair. So again, here's where Dr. Silk, as I mentioned earlier, is, you know, trying to sell the Blackwater concept to the highest bidder. And while he's doing that, well, Ninjak, you know, Ninjak is just so skilled at everything. You know, he just never has any problems ever. So he just hacks the computer and sucks out all the information about the Blackwater and sets a timer for, you know, because it's red, I'm going to assume some sort of explosion, right? Get some cooler up-close shots, even though there are a lot of shadow on his face, of Dr. Silk and his gross, you know, if the gross figure and face that he has. Some more cool shots of Ninjak in action, fighting off the guards here. Nice kick to the face, tooth flying out. I always like that as a kind of a fun detail when someone gets hit. And this design element that we had a lot of last issue only comes back for this panel here. And it works really well, and it's really cool, but feels a little bit out of place because we haven't had it all throughout this issue. Now, I have to assume that something like this is definitely a little bit more time-consuming than drawing a square or a rectangle, and working stuff out a little bit more with the negative space. So I feel like, you know, Quesada did a lot of it in issue 1, and for issue 2 said, the hell with it. You know, it's probably going to be faster hitting the deadlines without doing too much of this stuff, but for some reason decided just to throw one in for good measure, I guess. Some pretty cool action sequences of Ninjak just, you know, getting through these thugs here and getting out of the building. And again, as opposed to the Image guys, he's really given us a lot of bang for a buck on each page, storytelling wise. This page here, you know, I haven't been counting, but this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 panels, right? And some interesting layouts and stuff. Just because I'm curious with the page before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 panels. So, you know, he's not doing a lot of gratuitous splash pages or double page splashes. I think there's one of each in this issue, maybe. And that's about it. Really not cheaping out on the storytelling at all. So apparently, having shot Ninjak, Dr. Silk's sex slave reveals herself to actually be CIA, maybe a little too early. to say that before you have the upper hand on your attackers or your people imprisoning you. Of course, NINJAK is there to save the day, and I like this little bit of dialogue here where, you know, the character realized you were faking, and NINJAK to say, "She never fired, it was my blast bearings you heard." Ninja is also the art of deception. So, you know, this we've heard a lot. It's kind of a ninja trope, so I like how they kind of were able to work that in there. Simple, very small, kind of negative space silhouette here works really well, where, you know, usually you don't have the panel border, but you kind of do with where the sound effect's been delineated, and also just a little bit of overlap with the panel over top of NINJAK's silhouette here. Just makes it fun and interesting. Of course, NINJAK has activated the Blackwater. Okay, so we're, as I said, we might be expecting an explosion, but no, it's just releasing the Blackwater and flooding the mountain hideout of Dr. Silk. And that's the last we'll be seeing of him, at least in this issue. And only to finish off and wrap it all up at the end here with a clever little bit here that says, you know, who knows, thanks to war plagues, even natural disasters, there's so many secrets, knowledge that's been lost over time. Let's just hope they're in good hands if someone does have them. Referring to the fact that now, at this point, NINJAK is the only person who has access to the information on how to create the Blackwater. And that is it for Joe Quesada on NINJAK. I remember them announcing NINJAK number 5 here, and clearly not artwork produced by Joe Quesada. And I think I got caught originally as a kid to actually buy issue 3 and to get home and realize that, oh, unfortunately, Joe Quesada had not drawn the interiors. And that's probably where my collecting of NINJAK stopped as well, because the main reason I was buying it was the amazing Joe Quesada artwork. All right, guys, that is it for today. Thank you so much, everybody who is still subscribed and watching the channel, watching the videos. I really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you, and it really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone, once again, thanks for watching, and have yourselves an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!